What is up, everyone? Brandon Ferst, aka First Report, representing the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. Welcome into another edition of the NFL Weekly, the Divisional Weekend preview to be exact. With me, as always, we'll start with my co-host. We got Raider Jim Martinez. You can find Mr. Martinez at Raider Jim 1090. How you doing tonight, sir?
Hey, doing great. Sun comes out. It looks like San Diego again over here.
Yeah. The only thing though, you got to remap the pothole map that you had laid out over the last few weeks. It's a little rough out there.
I found a couple
my
new ones today.
suspension.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, but it could be a lot worse. Could be a lot worse. So just keep that in mind. We also, of course, as always, have Coach Brandon Lupian. You can find Coach at Portland 76er on Twitter. How you doing tonight, sir?
Doing quite well. Excited to tackle this episode on a football level. Don't get it twisted though. Even if the sun out, you step just a foot into the shade, it drops 10 degrees.
Yeah.
And I'm a cold guy.
We're not built for sub 50.
Right. I'm a tropical person. I get cold too fast.
Amen. We pay a lot of money for this weather, darn it. Anything below 50 and I want a refund. But
yeah, send that in the mail or something, direct deposit that. State of California.
And there's all the people back east are rolling their eyes at us right now. But you know what? That's okay too. But we do, of course, have the divisional round 4 games to break down as we try to figure out the final 4 going into next week's conference championship Sunday. But before we dive into that, let's take a look back at a pretty wild card weekend. Obviously the Niners did what they needed to do, a great second half, but it did look a little dicey for a minute. But at the end of the day, they got the job done. Obviously, then we saw the Jaguars come from 27 down to defeat the Los Angeles Chargers, who just seem like they'd love to let their fan base down. And then, of course, we saw Buffalo escape against Miami. And then a interesting game, and the Vikings season comes to an end. So at least the Pittsburgh Steelers might not be, Pittsburgh Steelers from like 4 or 5 years ago may not be the best 12-win team the NFL has ever seen. The Vikings may have a case for that. And of course, Sunday night, we saw the immaculate fumble or the immaculate cough up, if you will. Tyler Huntley from 2 yards out tries to go over the top. Doesn't happen. Sam Hubbard takes it 98 yards, and the Bengals survive against Baltimore. And then, of course, Monday night, we saw Tom Brady at his worst in the playoffs. No doubt about it. Dallas dominates Tampa Bay, setting up a very interesting weekend ahead. But Raider Jim, will give you first crack at it. What are your thoughts of Wild Card Weekend?
Well, I will tell you, I was wrong on a couple levels because those games were a lot closer than I thought when it came down to the Dolphins. They really put their good foot forward during that one. And you got to hand it to that young man that was quarterbacking, because he just went out there and played the game. The Chargers, what do you say? They are about as consistent as you can get when it comes to, as you use the word, disappointment. But then add to that, they give up a 27-point lead, and they fired the offensive coordinator. So it wasn't the defensive coordinator's fault, which you can't fire your head coach, I guess, because I believe he is the defensive coordinator. But wow, it's this is politics on the NFL level. Somebody's got to be the scapegoat. Somebody's got to pay for what happened. So might as well be the guy named Lombardi. And what do you say about the Giants? Put together everything they needed to put together, and there they are. Cincinnati's out there after a tough game, and San Francisco, though, for my money, it's lining up to be Kansas City, San Francisco in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, as obviously I'm a huge Eagles fan. Awkwardly, I think I'll be cheering for the Cowboys on Sunday, because I need someone to take the Niners out. Are the Niners beatable? Yes. But they are an absolute house right now. Both sides of the ball. Obviously, their defense all year has been dominant, and obviously now Brock Purdy looks like he may be the best quarterback out of those three, which is absolutely incredible, going from the last pick of the draft to starting and possibly on his way to a Super Bowl appearance in his rookie year. Cue the Tom Brady similarities on that. But Coach, what were your thoughts of a wild card weekend?
So I'm looking outside my kitchen window, and I swear I'm ready to see a pig fly. Knowing that you're really rooting for the Cowboys, I really question your character now. And that was one thing I never thought I'd have to do. But wild card weekend was to say the least, it was kind of exciting, and it's really setting up some fun matchups for this weekend. And what more can we say about that team to the north? One, they never represented San Diego right. Two, I mean, geez, they're really letting Southern California down. And are we really surprised with the decision makings coming from the top down in regards to whom they're letting go and firing on that staff? It's kind of like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. But as far as the fans that really know how they operate, there's nothing new on that end. Looking forward to a good weekend of football this weekend coming up. The matchups as we see it are very intriguing, and ready to dive in, ready to dive in and give my 2 cents where it be.
Yeah, it was an interesting weekend. Obviously the extra 2 games, of the extra team making it in, that's always interesting. I did like the Monday. I didn't like the Monday night game, but I do like the idea of it. It's a nice little end to the weekend, but yeah, it is time to kind of dive into these 8 teams that, no more bye weeks. Everyone's playing. Just in case you forgot about the Eagles and Chiefs, they'll be right in your face on Saturday. And that's where we're going to start, at least chronologically. We will start at Arrowhead, where we see the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Kansas City Chiefs. The Jaguars are plus 350 on the money line, Kansas City minus 480. Biggest spread of the weekend, with Kansas City 8.5-point favorites. The over-under is 53. This is an AFC West jurisdiction. Raider Jim, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah. What do you say? Kansas City at home, nice and rested. They got to see what Jacksonville brings to the table. All I can say about Jacksonville is this isn't the Chargers that they're going to be playing against. So it's if they get down 27 to the Chiefs, they're not going to recover on this one. But I think they're going to make it a game. I think that they have enough offense, defense, and confidence right now that they will stay close to Kansas City. They may never pull ahead, or they may pull ahead if they get first possession type of a thing. But 8.5, I think that's kind of big. I see Jacksonville beating the spread in this one, and I'm not sure about the over/under. Right now I'm leaning towards under, and that's because it's supposed to be a little bit of snow, a little bit of sleet, a little bit of rain in Kansas City. And boy, that can be a nasty place to play when the elements are involved. But Mahomes, Kelsey, and the boys, they're going to be ready to go, and they don't look past anybody. So they don't believe that their ticket is punched for the Super Bowl. They just know that they have a game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So that's what I think about that one.
Yeah, I agree with you. Obviously, 27-0 deficit is a different animal against a team like Kansas City. But I just have to say, obviously, I don't expect Jacksonville to win this game. I do lean towards them covering, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of get blown out. But that shouldn't diminish the job that Doug Peterson has done. Obviously, I'm incredibly biased. Doug Peterson brought Super Bowl to Philadelphia, but you're seeing what he's done in Jacksonville. I guarantee you nobody would sing the praises more about Doug Peterson than Trevor Lawrence. We've seen him turn from essentially us going, wow, this was supposed to be a generational talent. Now we're wondering if he's going to be a bust. Now he's kind of back to on track. And I think that's something that for Jacksonville, they have to feel very good about. Obviously, they don't want to hear that when they're, looking at a playoff game, but I don't know if this is a winnable game for Jacksonville. I just think Kansas City too good at home. You talked about the weather as well. That's just an extra little cherry on top. And Trevor Lawrence has been undefeated on Saturdays in his football life, or at least high school through college to pros life. I think that ends this weekend, but I do expect them to put up a fight. So I will take Jacksonville plus 8.5. The over under, I was kind of on the fence as well. And then that weather report kind of pushes me towards the under. This is a big number, 52 or 53 points. That's a big number to take down. And we might not see that happen. Another part of these big numbers as well is if Jacksonville does go down, say 27-0 again, they're not kicking field goals. So we can't kind of rely on the whole, okay, at least when they're in field goal range, we'll get 3 more points here, push us closer to the over. I think Doug Peterson and everyone in Jacksonville understands field goals are not going to beat Patrick Mahomes. You're going to have to score touchdowns. That puts them in a bit of a tough bind. But I do like Jacksonville to cover 8.5. Give me the under, but I expect Kansas City to move on to Championship Sunday. Coach, what are your thoughts? Kansas City hosting the Jaguars.
I think that weather report's huge as far as the decision-making has been going. And if it really is what it says it's going to be, I really do like the under, as you both have alluded. But this is also something that I didn't consider until hearing it, was that 8.5 spread is high for one. It's even higher with the chance of what the weather could be. So I got to go with the favorites to win it, but not necessarily cover the spread.
Yeah, it's a big spread. And in games like this, obviously Jacksonville and for Kansas City, they're not going to leave it. The playbook is going to be wide open. I don't think Andy Reid, at least early, is going to leave anything to chance. Maybe if they get up 27-0, maybe then they kind of condense the playbook. But I do think both of these teams obviously are going to, go full bore. I don't think Andy Reid or the Chiefs are overlooking this Jacksonville Jaguar team. They're a very, very good team. And we saw it last week, and I know the Chargers have had their issues closing out games, but at the same time, Jacksonville went out and did what they needed to do. And the cojones of Doug Peterson, I don't quite understand when you have a chance to kick the extra point and only go down 3, and these coaches go for 2 because that's what the analytics say. Now, don't get me wrong, it worked out for Jacksonville, but that could have been a different talking point if we got to that point. But we'll see if that changes anything this weekend. But I think we all expect Kansas City to get the job done, but Jacksonville to make it a closer game than expected. And that's a perfect little segue into the Eagles hosting the New York Giants. The Eagles actually money line side of things are minus 335. The Giants are plus 290. I was very surprised to see this spread with Philadelphia minus 7.5. The over under sits at 48. And one of the big things that is talked about in when you deal with a team playing or going for a sweep, the triple sweep, essentially. The Eagles won 2 games against the Giants in the regular season. Now they're going for that third. And in my mind, I've always looked at it and went, yeah, this doesn't end well. The statistics will back it up. I actually went and looked. There have been 23 such meetings for a team to essentially get the 3 sweep, if you will. The sweeping team is 14-9. So now obviously it's not a guarantee, but I was actually surprised by those numbers just because I thought it would maybe even be flipped and even more dramatic on that side. It is still very difficult to beat a team 3 times in a row. But I will also say if the New York Giants needed to win week 18, I think the New York Giants would have beaten the Philadelphia Eagles. And I am a little concerned about this game. I expect the Giants to cover. I think this is going to be a field goal game. It's going to be a lot closer than I would like it to be, if I'm being honest. I just think what the Giants have been able to do, they're learning how to win. And I think that's key, especially against good teams. I made the joke about the Vikings being the worst 12-win team ever, blah, blah, blah. It's still a good football team they had to beat. They still had to condense, Justin Jefferson and that, potent passing attack. But in this situation, like I said, I think the Eagles win by a field goal. So give me the Giants plus 7.5. In the over-under side of things, this is a tough one. 48. I'm going to go with the over. I do think we're going to see points being scored. I think Daniel Jones, I mean, look, he's dangerous with his legs as well, especially when he stays on two of them. He unfortunately has some moments where the turf monster gets him, but I do expect Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley to keep this a close game. I'm going to do my famous emotional hedge. I'm putting money line. I'm putting $10 on the Giants on that money line. So if for whatever reason the Giants do pull this one out, I'm bummed, but at least, I could go buy a burrito or something with it and drown my sorrows in that California burrito. But at the end of the day, I think the Eagles get the job done. It's going to be a challenge. It's a Sunday or a Saturday night game. So you're giving those crazies, an extra 4 or 5 hours to get their, alcoholic beverages in. I think it's going to be a wild atmosphere. But my big concern with the Eagles has been, we hear a lot about second half teams. Well, the Eagles are a first half team. They are not good in the second half. They get up to big leads and it just kind of almost always shrinks to a one possession by the end of it. So with that being said, I like the Giants plus 7.5. Give me the over 48. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts?
Oh, sorry, I dozed off.
Man, I'm just getting it from all sides over here. That's what I get for being honest, folks.
See, I threw that out there.
Honest.
Actually, I was going to say last week I dropped some M&M on you guys. And this week I was going to say, hey man, I'm sorry, you were talking. I was doing my Fat Joe and just leaning back while you were talking. So. This is going to be a great game. I like the matchup because it's so old school. Even I'm not old enough to remember these guys playing, but I remember reading about them. All I can think of is Y.A. Tittle and Chuck Bednarik, man. We're talking the classic picture of Y.A. Tittle on his knees after a championship game, blood running down his bald head, and Bednarik, who played most of his career with a couple of his fingers doing 90-degree turns off of his hand. Boy, this is good old blue-collar football. This is going to be a good one. I think Philadelphia definitely comes out on top, advances to the final. However, I agree with you. I think the Giants really have their stuff together right now. They're doing it one game at a time, which is all you have to do in this situation. It's the March Madness, survive and advance mentality, and that's what they're going to do. They're going to put a great game on the field. They are going to compete. They're going to try to ground and pound it, keep the Philadelphia offense off the field. But when all is said and done, they'll cover the 7.5. I'll probably go for an extra half point. Give me 8 on that one. Giants to cover plus 8. And I'm going to go with the over also, but I'm going to drop it down a half point to 47.5.
Yeah, it's a good way to look at it. And apologies, I put you to sleep over there. Hopefully I didn't put the people out there to sleep, especially if you're driving. But yeah, send that hate mail to Raider Jim. Anyways, Coach, your thoughts on the Eagles hosting the Giants?
I'm going to be the outlier and just go with the Giants here to cover and win. Sorry, I'm rooting for you guys, but both these head coaches are new head coaches. And I think Dable just has a little bit more playoff experience when it comes to decision making. And I'm basing that off my decision. Nothing to do with how the Eagles are a second half team. Last week I weighed the pros and cons between Dougie P and Staley. And I went with the coaching experience. These two guys are new to the head coaching title, but I think Dable has been the more experienced when it had to come to decision making and making some certain calls that, those risk takers do or whatnot. Hey, he's had a guy like Josh Allen, whom I've absolutely loved over his time playing. What he's done with Daniel Jones in regards to reducing the turnovers and protecting the ball, it's leading to to the conclusion of right now in this game and in playoffs. And they are playing at a level that they're probably like ready to just gel at this point. Not gel necessarily into the championship, but gel one game at a time and make it a lot closer than probably expected. You alluded to beating a team 3 times. It's not an easy task. I believe the record is 14-9. I think it's 15-9 after this past weekend. And you know, it's just one of those circumstances where I'm taking a risk. I'm calling Philly special right now, but it's Giant special. And what more exciting outcome than that is for an upset, and go with that.
Now you can pick against my team and all that stuff.
Don't take it personally.
But don't touch my Philly special. All right.
I wouldn't. That's probably one of the most classic calls ever. And I went with Dougie P last week and he delivered, right? Different circumstance as far as that goes, but I'm just trying to take everything out. Take Philly won both games this year, right? Take the records out, take the growth of the Jalen Hurts out, which has been amazing, playing at an MVP caliber level all season long. Not discrediting anything that your Eagles have done all year long, even with taking our first round pick, my Saints first round pick, not discrediting anything, but just going, well, let me weigh these 2 head coaches out. Sirianni's pushed every right button all season long. Dable's getting his team together and growing all season long. Yeah, there are ups and there's downs. There's valleys and peaks. I'm just counting this one weekend as a peak for them. 9 out of 10 times they play, it'll probably be the Eagles, but like one time in a matchup that's crucial, playoff time. Different kind of like aspects of things come into play. Nerves, buys, decision makings, and I'm going with a decision maker that has had to make some play calls and get outbeat. Last year with his Bills got outbeat by KC. He didn't push the wrong button asking for this offensive play call throughout that entire game. They just got beat by a better offensive team at the end. I'm just going to go with a decision making, head coach versus all the accolades y'all deserved all season long.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. It's
Yeah,
gonna be a good game.
Too.
I think
the
Giants definitely cover.
Yeah, could definitely possibly win. That's all I'm going with.
Yep.
So.
I will throw one more stat out there. 2013, the last time the New York Giants won in Philadelphia. So they'll hope to end that streak on Saturday. And I'll tell you what, any Giants fan, I guarantee you would say they'd sign up for that 10-year drought if they could get the victory against the Eagles on Saturday.
Right.
So moving on to the Sunday side of things. We will start in the AFC. This will be the 1 o'clock on the East Coast, 10 a.m. on the West Coast. Do the math in between. You have the Cincinnati Bengals at the Buffalo Bills. Bengals are plus 215 on the money line. Buffalo minus 250. Buffalo is 5.5 point favorites, and the over-under sits at 48. This, of course, was the Monday night game that we're going to get. It was in Cincinnati, and then, of course, the DeMar Hamlin situation happened. So we are going to get this game, and it's going to be a really, really good one, I believe, maybe the best one of the weekend. Raider Jim, I'll give you the honors to get us started. We got the Bills hosting the Bengals.
Yeah, I'm surprised at a 5.5 point spread here. 5.5, Buffalo's at minus 5.5 right now. Also, like Kansas City, the weather in Buffalo is going to be a little bit wet, possibly a little bit snowy, which means it's going to be cold. Traction on the running game is going to be bad. Grabbing that ball out of the air, you might see some long passes, but possibly not. But all that said, now this is not an apples to apples comparison. It's not apples to oranges either, though. Maybe it's like oranges and grapefruits. But who did Josh Allen remind either of you of last week during that game? I'll tell you who I thought of as I watched him. And there was a little bit of that. And this is not intended to disrespect the man, because I really respect him as a man and even as a player. Phillip Rivers. There was always the turnover. There was always the miscue. There was even the Derek Carr this year. Every time you get close, something went wrong. If not, it was the grace of God, I think, that they were able to stay in that game. And one of the Fox writers just put out a headline a little bit ago, and he said he walks the line between being aggressive and reckless. And you can't be that way against Cincinnati. For one thing, they got Joe Burrow over there. He's just waiting, and they've already are playing the playoffs with chips on their shoulders right now. So this is going to be quite a game. There is no way that Buffalo covers the spread on this one, even if they win. Give me the half point. Give me Cincinnati +6 on this one. But I do think we'll see the over in this. Both teams like to go out. Both teams like to score. So I say that. But watch, if Cincinnati puts together the right defensive scheme and can get at him, boy, it's going to be a long afternoon for Josh Allen.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, outside of, the Super Bowl last year, Joe Burrow is undefeated in the playoffs. He hasn't lost in the playoffs, and he's been on the road as well. All last year was on the road. I do think there is a bit of an interesting kind of caveat to all this. Obviously, if we see Kansas City win, and if we see Buffalo win, we'll have our first ever neutral site championship game, which I'm a little bummed at the way we got there. Obviously, we wanted to see that game, and obviously Damar Hamlin would have loved to have not gone through that whole ordeal. But it's kind of nice to, it'd be something different. I don't know if it was for sure, but I did hear maybe Indy was the spot that they were going to do that game, but don't quote me on that. But obviously, still some things to get done here. And the big hurdle is for Buffalo, I think. I agree with you. I think Cincinnati will cover. I wouldn't be surprised if Cincinnati wins this game. There's just something about this team. And I know they struggled last week, and everyone has their thoughts of what should have happened, right? It's Tyler Huntley. It's not Lamar Jackson. You need to win by X number of points for us to take you seriously. Well, that's a very similar to what the Eagles had to deal with the Giants, playing a team for a third time. I don't think it was an opportunity to beat the team for a third time, but it was a third matchup between those two teams. And we saw that kind of familiarity come out. And, if it wasn't for that, situation, quarterback sneak, we could be talking about Baltimore in this situation. But at the end of the day, I'm going to ride with Burrow. I think he's the hot hand. You brought up the turnovers. Obviously, Josh Allen before last week was very good at protecting the football in the playoffs. And last week, it almost came back to bite him in the behind. And we shall see how this one's going to go. I think this is going to be overall the best game of the weekend. I'm definitely taking the over. I know we might get some weather, but we're also getting two teams that I think are prepared for it. I mean, the last 4 or 5 home games these teams have played might not have been snow games, but they've been cold. And, Burrow played, obviously, he grew up in Ohio, played plenty of snow games, I'm sure. And obviously Josh Allen has been well acquainted with the Buffalo side of things over the past few years. So give me Cincinnati, my +5.5. I do like the over 48. I think we're going to see some points being scored, and it's going to be a very, very interesting matchup from two teams that essentially 3 weeks ago were preparing to do battle. Didn't get the job, or, weren't able to finish that. So we'll see if there's some extra incentive. I will say, I think it would be really, really cool. And I may change my bet if you do see Damar Hamlin in attendance, because I think that is that extra, it's not too much off-field stuff that I really give credence to, but I think that's one of them. That's a great little fire up the behind of Buffalo. If they could get Damar Hamlin there. Obviously, I don't know if that's going to happen or anything like that. I'd love to see him there, and I'm sure he'd love to be there, but his health is first and foremost at the moment. But that's just one little caveat I throw out there. If you do see Damar Hamlin on the sidelines, might want to think about that, just that emotional bump that they'll get. But Coach, what are your thoughts? We have the Cincinnati Bengals heading to Buffalo.
I can't agree with you more if he were to show up, what a motivating factor he could be. Not that either team needs any motivation at this point in the playoffs, but I I thought Cincinnati was going to get them 3 weeks ago. I like Cincinnati at Buffalo this week. I think it will be over. I just love Joe Burrow. I think weather is not a factor for these two northern outdoor teams. And you know, at the end of the day, um, I think the growth of Cincinnati, the motivation of Cincinnati, the taste that Cincinnati had last year getting to the Super Bowl, not dealing with the hangover like the champions did, is the underlying factor. And I really think of these two teams, it's going to be Cincinnati. I have more faith in Cincinnati to beat a team like KC or get to the Super Bowl, um, especially in the tournament. The tournament's a different realm. The playoffs is a different realm for these teams and these guys. And yeah, I like Cincinnati in this point in the season.
Yeah, I can't wait for that. I think this like I said, it is going to be the game we've kind of all been waiting for. Obviously, a few weeks back we didn't get it, and this is going to be whoever comes out of this. Once again, more than likely taking on Kansas City, and Kansas City's going to have their hands full because this is going to be a battle. I don't like to use the war analogy, but it is as close as you can use that analogy. This is going to be a battle. It's going to be a high scoring battle, I believe. Throw the weather in there as well. That could be really, really interesting. But final game of the weekend is an interesting one. I was surprised to see the spread on this. You have the Dallas Cowboys plus 155 at the San Francisco 49ers, who are minus 190 money line side of things. The Niners are only 3.5-point favorites here, and the over-under sits at 46. This is the smallest spread of the weekend, which I knew Kansas City was going to be the biggest spread. Before the lines even came out, I just expected that. But I expected San Francisco to be closer to 7 on this. I know that Dallas looked good Monday night, but I think you're facing a much better team. With all due respect to the Buccaneers, I felt when they went down 18-0, they just quit. There were a lot of plays in that game that I thought maybe the referee blew the play dead because Tampa Bay just stopped playing. That's not going to happen against San Francisco. You're not going to be able to survive missing 4 extra points against San Francisco and winning the game. I like San Francisco to cover 3.5. Like I said, I'd probably go up higher to even 5.5 would be kind of my number. I'm going to take the under here. I think Dak Prescott is a ticking time bomb. Once again, I think this is a guy, I like him as a human being. I think he's a fantastic leader. I really liked what he said. Obviously, you had Brett Maher miss 4 extra points, and we all saw Dak Prescott get frustrated. And he came out and he said, look, that's my guy. I'm going to ride with Money Maher, until the end of time. And he brought it up. He goes, I played like crap last week. And it's truthful. So it was nice to hear that from him as a leader. But at the end of the day, I just think San Francisco's too good. I think Dallas looked good on Monday night, but they are facing a whole different animal in the San Francisco 49ers. So give me the Niners minus 3.5 and under 46 in this one. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts on the old school NFC battle?
Yeah, I will say the NFC couldn't have written this better to have the two matchups that they have. Classics, the Giants and the Eagles, the Cowboys and the 49ers. Maybe we'll see Dwight Clark run across the end zone just for the heck of it. Why not? But what a game it's going to be. But I agree with you. 3.5. I look at the other spreads, and it's almost a disrespect to the 49ers for the caliber of football they've been playing all season, and especially with Brock Purdy. I mean, the guy's just good. He's legitimately good, and his teammates are taking care of him. There is no way that they can't cover this, in my mind. My estimation is they will cover 3.5. I won't even go a half point up or down on that one, just straight 3.5. And I thought about over on this, but I see it more like a 28-17, which puts us right at 45, which means that the under is going to be the better bet for me. Dallas, I think, played a great game on Monday night. However, look at the competition. And as you alluded to, it is a much different level of competition. San Francisco weather is not going to be a factor. It's going to be crisp. It's going to be cool, but the rains are done. So give me the 49ers, give me to cover the spread, and then also under 46 on this one. And if Jerry Jones just happens to be tuning in again this week, as I'm sure he does week in and week out when we do the podcast, Jerry, I'm questionable outside of 50 yards, but I guarantee you I can hit every extra point, even at my age.
There you go. Yeah. It was luckily, I mean, for, the Cowboys and their fans, it didn't really matter. It was more of kind of a, WTF moment in a joking way rather than, them lose by a field goal and you add up the 4 extra points and go, I see something there, but didn't really come into effect, but it will this weekend, guaranteed. They're going to need all the points they can get. Coach, what are your thoughts? Niners hosting the Cowboys.
I think the title of Mr. Irrelevant is out the door right now. I think you could plug any quarterback into that San Francisco equation, and they're going to protect the ball. They're going to distribute it where it needs to. And I think the underlying factor is Shanahan's going to make a call that's going to protect the possession versus being a risk. I really do think the Niners are the more complete team, defense, running wise. I can't necessarily say quarterback wise, but Dak's not going to separate himself from what Purdy's production has been. I've never really, I think Mike McCarthy's done an outstanding job getting his team to the position they are right now, but that doesn't mean I'm a fan of his. I'm not. But I do like the Niners here. I think they got a little bit of a wake-up call against Seattle. And then as soon as they figured it out, they had to get their stuff together. They absolutely did. And I think they'll continue that trend against Dallas this weekend too. So pencil me in where the Niners. And what did you say it was? Minus 5.5?
Oh yes, I'm sorry. Yes, 3.5. 3.5 is the line.
Yeah, I like the Niners. 3.5. I know the Cowboys did sign a kicker. In addition to, I don't know if that's going to even matter. And the under over is what?
50, or excuse me, 46.
I was going to say 50.
Yeah, no.
I think both teams have enough to go over that. So I like the Niners and I like the over.
I will also add one more to the pro Niners column. I would say this is the biggest coaching mismatch of the weekend. With all due respect to Mike McCarthy, I just think Kyle Shanahan is the better coach in this matchup, and I think he has the better players. And for me, that spells a lot more than 3.5 cover. So I'm a big fan of what we'll see here. I actually already have the bet in on this.
I couldn't agree with that statement anymore. You know, I think you're spot on with that.
Perfect. Well, that is all we have for divisional weekend as we get ready to look ahead as we're getting closer and closer, about a month away from the Super Bowl. But we still got some housekeeping to do before that. Let's get our final thoughts. Raider Jim, you're up.
Yeah, Josh Allen throws an interception. Well, one of many, but he throws an interception, and after one of his interceptions, he gets into it with Christian Wilkinson, and like any good offensive lineman, here comes one of his big beasts out there, and it was Mitch Morse. Mitch Morse runs up, and he's going to take care of business, which is what the O-linemen do. But the reason I'm even telling the story is because the next day, Morse's wife said, protects him more than he protects me.
Oh,
I thought that was fantastic.
To be fair, Mrs. Morris, he gets paid a lot of money to protect Josh Allen. And, I think that's a big part of it right there. And, but But yeah, that was an interesting one because it was like the defensive lineman like looked at Josh Allen and was like, I don't think I'm allowed to touch you. And then Josh Allen like touched him and he's like, all right, I'm going to block you normally now. And it was and believe me, Josh Allen is not a small human being. He's not
Right.
Baker
Right.
Mayfield or one of those type of quarterbacks. He can throw his weight around as well, but he did get out of there once the big uglies got there. He was like, okay, they don't need me anymore. But Coach, what are your final thoughts heading into divisional weekend?
Hey, it's wrapping up, and I think it's been a fun season so far, and it was a good, fun playoff last week. It's going to be an interesting, fun playoff this week, and again, I can't say enough to getting out here with you two and sharing this moment, and I look forward to a wonderful weekend of football ahead.
Amen. Mine's short and simple. Go Birds. It's the only thing that really matters to me this weekend. I know that sounds terrible, but it's 5:15 Saturday night. I will be in the fetal position for about 3.5 hours, and we'll see how it goes. But for me, that's what it comes down to. I'd love to see the Eagles get the victory, but at the same time, maybe that night I'll overreact. But I think overall the Eagles' future is very bright, no matter what happens on Saturday. But I'm greedy and I want it all right now. But with that, thank you all so much for listening to this edition of the NFL Weekly presented by the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. It is time for you all to go wash your hands and stop hating, everybody. We'll talk to you all very soon. Take care.